The photograph was discovered in 1947. A historian named William Garrett found it while clearing out an old cabin in the Idaho high country. The place was scheduled for demolition, and he had been hired to salvage anything of historical value before the wrecking crews arrived. He almost missed it. The box was hidden beneath a loose floorboard in the master bedroom, wrapped in oilcloth that had kept it dry for over 50 years. Inside, he found a leather journal, 4 simple silver rings, and a photograph that made him sit down heavily on the dusty floor. The image showed a woman standing between 3 men on a wooden porch. She was beautiful, perhaps in her mid-20s, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to hold some secret joy. Her hand rested on one man's shoulder, another man's arm wrapped around her waist. The third stood close enough that their bodies touched. All 4 of them were smiling, not the stiff, formal smiles of Victorian photography. These were real smiles, the kind that come from deep happiness, from belonging, from love. On the back of the photograph, in elegant script that had faded but remained legible, someone had written, "We chose each other, and the world be damned." E.T., 1892. Professor Garrett turned the photograph over again, studying the faces. Women did not stand like that with 3 men. Not in 1892, not anywhere. The implications were scandalous, impossible, the kind of thing that proper society refused to acknowledge even existed. And yet here was the proof. 4 people who had found something together that the world said could not exist. He opened the journal carefully. The first page made his breath catch. "My name is Eleanor Thornton," the elegant handwriting began. "Before that I was Eleanor Whitmore of Charleston, and this is the story of how I ran from civilization straight into the arms of 3 men who would never let me go, not because they imprisoned me, but because I chose to stay. This is that story, and it begins not with love, but with blood." 4 days earlier, the woman was still alive when Caleb Thornton found her, not alive in the way people usually mean it, not screaming, not fighting, just breathing in short, broken pulls while the autumn grass cut into her back and the September sun beat down without mercy. Her dress, once gray cotton and probably decent enough for travel, had been torn in several places. Her feet were bare, the soles cut and bleeding. Dried blood matted the hair at her temple, and her wrists showed the purple swollen marks of rope burns that spoke of days, not hours of restraint. But it was her eyes that stopped Caleb cold. Green as pine forests after rain, those eyes stared up at the sky with the blank acceptance of someone who had stopped hoping. Someone who had been running so long and so hard that they no longer had the strength to care what happened next. Caleb Thornton had lived 52 years on this earth. 30 of those years he had spent in this wilderness, first as a soldier, then as a fugitive, and finally as a man who had built his own small kingdom far from the world that had tried to break him. He had seen death in all its forms: starvation, freezing, animal attacks, murder dressed up as justice, and justice that looked a lot like murder. He had watched men die screaming and men die silent, and he had learned that the manner of death told you everything about how a person had lived. But he had never seen eyes like hers, eyes that had given up. He dismounted slowly, keeping his movements visible and unthreatening. His horse, a sturdy paint mare named Soldier, stood patient and quiet behind him. "Miss," he said. His voice came out rougher than he intended, the product of days without conversation. "Can you hear me?" Those green eyes moved, focused on him, and something shifted in their depths. Not hope exactly, but a kind of weary recognition, as if she had been expecting someone to find her, and now that it had happened, she could finally stop waiting. Her cracked lips moved. The sound that emerged was barely a whisper. "Do not take me back." Caleb knelt beside her close enough to see the fine tremor running through her body, far enough to give her space. "Take you back where anywhere." Her voice broke on the word. "Kill me if you want, but do not take me back." And there it was, the thing that had been nagging at him since he first spotted her from the ridgeline. This was not a woman who had gotten lost. This was not a victim of bandits or bad luck. This was a woman who had been running from something, running so hard and so far that death seemed preferable to capture. Caleb Thornton knew something about running. He knew the weight of it, the way it wore you down until you forgot what it felt like to stand still. He knew how desperation could strip away everything civilized and leave only the animal need to survive. "I am not taking anyone anywhere," he said quietly. "And I do not kill women." She stared at him, searching his face for the lie, the trap, the hidden cruelty that experience had taught her to expect from men. She did not find it. Instead, she found weathered features and amber eyes that held no judgment. A scar that ran from his left temple to his jaw, the kind of scar that came from violence survived, gray threading through black hair that told of years and hard living. She found a man who looked like the wilderness had made him and who had no interest in pretending otherwise. Slowly, painfully, her hand moved to take the coat he had laid beside her. She pulled it closer, wrapping herself in the worn leather like a child seeking comfort. Caleb waited. "Can you stand?" he asked finally. "I do not know." "Then I will carry you." His eyes met hers. "If you allow it." That word, allow. Such a small thing, such a simple courtesy. And yet she could not remember the last time someone had asked her permission for anything. In Charleston, permission was never requested. It was assumed, demanded, taken. Her father had never asked if she wanted to be engaged. Harrington had never asked if she wanted to be touched. The world she had fled operated on the principle that women existed to be acted upon, not consulted. This stranger, this rough man who smelled of pine and leather and honest sweat, had just given her something she had almost forgotten existed. Choice. She nodded, a small movement barely visible. Caleb lifted her as gently as he could manage, surprised at how light she was. Too light. The kind of light that came from days without food, from a body that had consumed itself to keep running. He settled her on Soldier's back, then mounted behind her. She sagged against his chest, not from trust, but from simple exhaustion. "My name is Caleb Thornton," he said as he turned the horse toward home. "My camp is about half an hour's ride from here. You will be safe there." She did not answer, did not even acknowledge that she had heard, but she did not pull away. And Caleb Thornton, who had spent 3 decades learning to read the wilderness, recognized a wounded creature when he found one. He also recognized that wounded creatures needed time, space, and patience before they could begin to heal. The first thing Eleanor Whitmore saw when she opened her eyes was a ceiling made of pine logs. Not the ornate plaster of her bedroom in Charleston, not the water-stained boards of cheap hotels, real timber rough-hewn and honest with the smell of fresh resin still clinging to it. She lay on a bed, an actual bed with a frame and a mattress stuffed with something soft, covered in wool blankets and animal furs that held the warmth of recent fire. Someone had bandaged the wound on her temple. Someone had washed the dried blood from her face. Someone had placed a pitcher of water and a clean cup on the small table beside the bed, and someone was sitting in the corner of the room watching her. Not Caleb. This man was different. Similar height but leaner, with auburn hair shot through with threads of silver and eyes the bright green of new pine needles. He was younger than Caleb, she thought, but not by much, late 40s perhaps, and he was looking at her with open curiosity that somehow did not feel invasive. "You are awake," he said. His voice was warm, almost cheerful. "Good. I was starting to worry you might sleep for a week." Eleanor tried to sit up. Every muscle in her body screamed in protest. Slowly. The man rose but did not approach. "You are dehydrated, exhausted, and you have several bruises that look quite serious. Nothing life-threatening, but your body needs time." She looked at him through eyes that still held the fog of unconsciousness. "You are a doctor. Used to be." A sad smile crossed his face. "Before life had other plans. I am Silas Thornton, Caleb's brother." She absorbed this information. Brothers. The man who had found her had a brother who had once been a doctor. Questions formed in her mind, but she lacked the strength to voice them. The door opened. Caleb entered, followed by a third man. And Eleanor understood immediately why people called them the Mountain Men. The newcomer was enormous. at least 6'4" with shoulders like a bear and arms that looked capable of bending iron. His hair was black and long, pulled back from a face that seemed carved from the same granite as the mountains outside. He did not speak, simply stood in the doorway, dark eyes sweeping over Eleanor with the assessing gaze of someone evaluating a potential threat. "Jonas," Caleb said. "Our youngest brother." Jonas nodded. "Once," said nothing. Eleanor felt herself being catalogued, measured, filed away. It should have frightened her. After everything that had happened after Harrington and Charleston, and the long, desperate flight across 3,000 miles being studied by a silent giant should have sent her into panic. Instead, she felt oddly reassured. This was not the predatory attention of men who wanted something from her. This was the watchfulness of protectors assessing what they needed to protect. "How are you feeling?" Caleb asked. "Alive." Her voice came out as a croak. "More than I thought I would feel." "Are you hungry?" Her stomach answered for her, a loud and undignified rumble that would have mortified her a month ago. Now she was too tired to care. Silas laughed, a real laugh, not mocking, just genuinely amused. "I will take that as a yes." Jonas fetched some soup. Jonas vanished without a sound. One moment he was there, a mountain of a man filling the doorway. The next he was simply gone, moving with a silence that seemed impossible for someone his size. Eleanor looked around the room. Small, simple, but clean. A window looking out on pine forest, a wooden chair, a small table with the water pitcher. "This is your home?" she asked. "One of the cabins," Caleb replied. "The camp has 3. You are in Silas's cabin. He gave it up for you." "I cannot," she began. "You can." Silas's voice was gentle but firm. "And you will, at least until you are well enough to decide where you want to go." The words hung in the air. Where you want to go. Another choice. Another acknowledgement that her future was hers to determine. Jonas returned with a bowl of soup that steamed in the cool cabin air. He set it on the table beside the bed, not handing it to her directly, then stepped back. 3 men, 3 different approaches. Caleb, who watched and assessed. Silas, who spoke and reassured. Jonas, who acted and retreated. Eleanor reached for the soup. Her hands trembled, but she managed to lift the spoon. The first taste made her eyes fill with tears. It was not fancy. Just vegetables and some kind of meat in a thin broth. The kind of food that poor families survived on, the kind that Charleston society would have sneered at. It was the most delicious thing she had ever eaten. And as the warmth spread through her stomach, something else spread through her chest. Something she had almost forgotten how to feel. Safety. Why, she whispered. "Why are you helping me? You do not know who I am. You do not know what I have done." Caleb and Silas exchanged glances. Jonas remained motionless, watching. Finally, Caleb spoke. "Because someone needed help," he said simply, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "And we could help." Eleanor set down the spoon. Tears were streaming down her face now, and she could not seem to stop them. No one had simply helped her in longer than she could remember. Every act of kindness in her old life had come with strings attached, with expectations, with the unspoken understanding that she would owe something in return. These men had pulled her from the wilderness, dressed her wounds, fed her, given her a bed to sleep in, and they had not asked for anything. They had not even asked who was chasing her. The sound of hoofbeats cut through the moment. All 3 brothers stiffened. Caleb's hand moved to his hip, where Eleanor now noticed a pistol hung in a worn holster. "Someone is coming," Jonas said. 2 words. The first she had heard him speak. "Stay here." Caleb's eyes found Eleanor's. "Do not come outside, no matter what." They were gone before she could respond, moving with the coordinated efficiency of men who had faced danger together many times before. Eleanor sat alone in the cabin soup, growing cold in her lap, heart hammering against her ribs. They had found her. Harrington had found her. The nightmare had caught up. She waited for the sound of gunshots, for shouting, for the violence that seemed inevitable. Instead, she heard voices, calm voices, though she could not make out the words. Minutes passed. The tension in her body wound tighter with each heartbeat. Then the door opened. Silas entered first, his expression carefully neutral. "There is someone here to see you," he said. "You can come outside if you want. She is a friend." Eleanor stood on shaking legs and moved to the doorway. The woman on horseback was perhaps 55, with a weathered face, calloused hands, and eyes that missed nothing. She was dismounting as Eleanor appeared on the porch, her gaze sweeping over the younger woman with obvious concern. "Thank the Lord," the woman said. "You made it." Eleanor stared at her memory swimming through the fog of the past few days. The general store in Millstone Junction, the kind woman who had given her directions to the Thornton camp, the map drawn on brown paper, the advice offered without judgment or prying questions. "Margaret," she whispered. "Maggie." The woman's face softened. "Maggie O'Brien. I own the store in town. I was worried when you did not arrive at the camp as planned. When your horse came back without you." Eleanor did not remember much of those final hours before Caleb found her. Just endless walking, falling, getting up again. The horse must have thrown her at some point, or perhaps she had simply slid off. The details were lost in a haze of exhaustion and fear. "How did you know to come looking?" she asked. "Caleb sent word yesterday when he found you." Maggie glanced at the brothers, then back at Eleanor. "And I needed to warn you." The warmth that had been building in Eleanor's chest turned to ice. "Warn me about what there have been men asking about you in Millstone Junction." Maggie's voice dropped. 2 days ago. One of them wore an expensive suit, spoke with a southern accent. The other looked like a hired tracker. Eleanor felt the blood drain from her face. What did they want? They were looking for a young woman. Brown hair, green eyes. Runaway from Charleston. Maggie met Eleanor's gaze directly. The well-dressed one did not give his name, but he offered a reward. $1,000 for information about your whereabouts. $1,000. More than most families in this territory earned in 5 years. Enough to tempt even good people into betrayal. "Did you?" Eleanor began. "I did not tell them anything." Maggie's voice was firm. "No one in Millstone Junction did. But money like that, someone will talk eventually. Someone always does." Caleb stepped forward. His face had gone hard, all traces of gentleness replaced by something cold and calculating. "Do you know who this man is?" he asked Eleanor. She looked at him, then at Silas and Jonas, who had materialized on either side of their brother like shadows. They had taken her in, fed her, protected her. They deserved to know what they had gotten themselves into. "His name is Marcus Harrington," she said. "He is a judge in Charleston." "A judge?" Silas frowned. "And the man I was promised to in marriage." Eleanor swallowed hard. "Before I ran." The silence that followed was heavy with implication. Caleb's amber eyes studied her with new intensity. He was seeing her differently now, she realized, not just as a wounded woman who needed help, but as a puzzle that needed solving. "Promised," he said finally. "Not married." "No. The wedding was supposed to be in October. And you ran instead." "Yes." "Why?" The question was simple. The answer was anything but. Eleanor looked at the 3 brothers, at Maggie, who had risked her own reputation to warn them at the wilderness that surrounded this small outpost of civilization. She had kept her secrets close for so long, first in Charleston, where speaking the truth meant social destruction, then on the road where trust could get you killed. But these people had earned something from her. If not full disclosure, then at least enough to understand the danger. "Harrington has had 3 wives," she said. "All of them are dead." No one spoke. The first one fell downstairs. The second died of a sudden illness. The third— Eleanor closed her eyes, remembering the conversation she had overheard on her engagement night. "The third jumped from a balcony." According to the official story, Silas's face had gone pale. And the unofficial story, no one dares tell it. But I heard him boasting to a friend at our engagement party about how he had trained his wives, about how long it took each one to learn obedience. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "He cornered me that night, showed me what our wedding night would be like." Jonas made a sound low in his throat, something that was almost a growl. "He touched you." Caleb's voice was flat dangerous. "He tried." Eleanor lifted her chin, a spark of her old defiance showing through the exhaustion. I kicked him. Hard. In a place that made him stop. Silas made a noise that might have been a suppressed laugh. You kicked a judge, he asked. He did not expect it. Men like that never expect women to fight back. Jonas sat down slowly, as if his legs had decided they needed a rest. For the first time, something close to a smile crossed his weathered face. Caleb had not moved, had not relaxed an inch. So you ran, he said. From Charleston. How far? About 3,000 miles. Eleanor felt the weight of every one of those miles pressing down on her. I had help at first. A woman named Ruth, she worked for my family. She helped me escape, gave me money and advice. I took trains, stagecoaches, eventually bought a horse. I sold my mother's emerald necklace to pay for it all. That is why he can claim you stole something, Silas said, understanding dawning in his eyes. The necklace. It was given to me. For the engagement party. But technically it belonged to the family. She shrugged wearily. So technically I am a thief, and Harrington has a legal reason to pursue you. He has a piece of paper that looks legal. Eleanor looked at Caleb. But you said it yourself. His authority means nothing here. It does not, Caleb confirmed. But men with money and determination do not always need authority, they just need enough force. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Maggie broke the silence first. I should get back to town. If Harrington or his tracker come asking again, I want to be there to make sure no one says anything foolish. She mounted her horse, then looked down at the group. Be careful, all of you. Thank you, Maggie. Eleanor meant it with every fiber of her being. For everything. Do not thank me yet. Maggie gathered her reins. Thank me when this is over and you are still free. She rode out of the camp, disappearing down the trail that led back to civilization. Eleanor stood on the porch watching until the last sound of hoofbeats faded into silence. What happens now? She asked. Caleb exchanged glances with his brothers. Some kind of communication passed between them, the wordless understanding of men who had lived and worked together for decades. Now Caleb said, "We prepare." They gave her back Silas's cabin for sleeping, but Eleanor spent most of her time in the main cabin where the brothers lived and worked. The camp, she learned over the following days, was larger than it appeared from outside. 3 solid structures built to withstand harsh mountain winters, a smokehouse for preserving meat, a workshop filled with tools and traps and supplies, corrals for horses and mules, storage sheds packed with provisions, and everywhere evidence of careful planning. These men had not stumbled into survival. They had built it methodically over years. The first evening after Maggie's visit, they sat around the long wooden table in the main cabin while Jonas served a meal of venison stew and fresh bread. You are wondering why we live out here, Silas said. Everyone wonders. Eleanor had been wondering exactly that. 3 men alone in the wilderness, avoiding the towns and settlements where normal people lived. There had to be a story, but she had her own secrets. She would not pry into theirs. I am wondering how 3 people built all this, she said instead. It must have taken years, 5 years. Caleb broke off a piece of bread. We arrived with 2 mules' basic tools and enough supplies for 1 winter. Everything else we built ourselves. You must have had reasons for wanting to disappear. Caleb looked at her directly. His amber eyes held shadows she recognized because she had seen them in her own mirror. Everyone here has reasons, he said. That is the nature of the frontier. People come west because something back east was not working. We do not ask questions because we do not want questions asked of us. Fair enough. But since you told us your story, Silas said quietly, perhaps you deserve to know some of ours. Jonas made a small sound of protest. Silas raised a hand. She is in danger because of us now, because we chose to help her. She should know what kind of men we are. Eleanor looked at Jonas, whose dark eyes had fixed on his brother with something like warning. You do not have to, she said. I trust you. That is enough. Trust should be earned. Caleb's voice was heavy. And you should know what you are trusting. He set down his bread, stared into the fire for a long moment. I was a soldier, he said finally, 20 years ago. The Indian Wars. I rose to the rank of captain. I was good at what I did. Eleanor waited. One day my commanding officer ordered us to attack a village. Not warriors, women, children, elderly people who could not fight back. He looked up and the pain in his eyes was raw, unhealed. I refused. He told me I would be shot for disobedience. So I ran. The scar on your face, Eleanor said softly, from a soldier who tried to stop me. Caleb touched the line of raised flesh that ran from temple to jaw. He almost succeeded. Silas shifted in his chair. I was studying medicine in Boston, he said, top of my class, everything I had ever wanted. His green eyes had gone distant, looking at something far away. Our father was a businessman, respected, wealthy, and completely corrupt. When he died, the scandal came out. Embezzlement, fraud, bribery. The family name became worthless overnight, and you could not finish your studies. I could not show my face in polite society. Silas smiled, but there was no humor in it. Amazing how quickly people who claim to be friends can disappear when your name becomes inconvenient. Eleanor understood that better than he knew. Charleston society operated on the same principles. Reputation was everything, and losing it meant losing everything. And Jonas, she asked. The big man stirred. His brothers looked at him, waiting, leaving the choice in his hands. When he spoke, his voice was low and rough, as if the words cost him physical effort. I stopped talking when I was 12, he said, after our mother died. For 13 years I did not speak a single word. Eleanor stared at him. They put me in an asylum. His dark eyes met hers, a place for people they called insane. I spent 4 years there before Caleb and Silas found me. We broke him out. Caleb's voice was matter-of-fact. Nearly got ourselves killed doing it. Worth it. Jonas said the words like a simple truth, like a statement of fact that required no elaboration. So you came here, Eleanor said slowly, understanding dawning. All 3 of you, running from different things, and you built this place together. We built a life, Silas confirmed. A life where the past does not follow us, where we can be whoever we choose to be. Eleanor looked around the cabin, at the rough timber walls and the simple furniture, at the fire crackling in the stone hearth and the tools hanging on their pegs, at 3 men who had taken the broken pieces of their lives and assembled something whole. That is why you helped me, she said, because you understand what it means to run. We understand what it means to need a place to stop running. Caleb's amber eyes held hers. You have that place now, for as long as you want it. The words should not have affected her so deeply. They were simple, practical, the kind of offer that frontier people made to each other all the time. But Eleanor had spent 23 years being told who she was, what she wanted, and where she belonged. Her father made the decisions. Her mother enforced them. Society prescribed the narrow path she was expected to walk. No one had ever simply offered her a choice. Thank you, she whispered, for telling me, and for everything else. You do not need to thank us. Silas smiled. Just rest, heal. Let us worry about Harrington for now. But Eleanor shook her head. No, she said, and her voice was stronger than it had been since she arrived. I am done letting other people worry about my problems. If Harrington is coming, I want to know, and I want to help. Caleb studied her for a long moment. Whatever he saw in her face must have satisfied him because he nodded slowly. All right, he said. Then tomorrow we start teaching you how to survive. The lessons began at dawn. Eleanor had thought she knew something about hard work. In Charleston, she had embroidered for hours, managed household accounts, practiced the piano until her fingers ached. She had known nothing. Jonas took her out to the woodpile first thing in the morning while mist still hung in the trees and her breath came out in visible clouds. You need to learn this, he said, handing her an axe that felt impossibly heavy. Firewood is survival. She stared at the chopping block, at the log that waited there, at the tool in her hands that she had no idea how to use. Jonas positioned himself behind her, close enough to correct her form, far enough to give her space. Do not use arm strength, he said. Use your body weight. Let the axe fall. She tried. The blade glanced off the log and nearly flew out of her hands. Again. She tried again. This time the blade stuck in the wood and she could not get it out. Jonas reached over and freed it with a twist of his massive wrist. Again. By the time the morning was half gone, her arms were screaming, her back was in agony, and her hands had developed blisters that would become calluses. But she had split 3 logs. Good, Jonas said. The most words he had spoken to her in a single day. Eleanor looked at the neat pile of firewood, at her raw and reddened hands, at the sweat soaking through her borrowed shirt. She had done this, with her own body, her own effort. No servants, no staff, no one else making things easy. She grinned. Silas taught her about plants in the afternoon, which berries were safe to eat and which would kill you in an hour, how to identify medicinal herbs, how to make a poultice for wounds, a tea for fever, a salve for burns. The wilderness is a pharmacy, he said, showing her a small purple flower. You just have to know how to read it. She found that she liked this kind of learning. Practical, immediate, useful. Not the decorative accomplishments of a Charleston lady, but real knowledge that could save a life, including her own. Caleb took over after dinner, spreading maps and diagrams across the table. If Harrington comes, he said these are the approaches he might use. He traced the trails with his finger. From the south he has to come up through the valley. From the north there is a pass, but it is rough going. From the east and west, nothing but wilderness for 50 miles. So we have warning no matter which direction he comes from, if we are watching. Caleb's amber eyes met hers. And we will be watching. But you need to understand the terrain too, in case something happens and you need to move on your own. Eleanor studied the maps, the trails, the rivers, the places where a person could hide or be trapped. You think something might happen to you? She said. I think we should prepare for every possibility. His voice was calm, but she heard the steel beneath it. If it comes to a fight, I want you to know how to survive even if we do not. The thought of these 3 men dying to protect her was unacceptable. She would not allow it. Then you had better teach me to fight, she said. Caleb's eyebrows rose. You weigh maybe 110 pounds. Harrington will bring men, probably armed. I kicked a 64-year-old judge hard enough to drop him. Eleanor lifted her chin. I learned fast. For the first time since she had met him, Caleb Thornton smiled. It changed his whole face, made him look younger, less hard, more human. All right, he said. Tomorrow we start with firearms. If you are going to fight, you might as well fight smart. The days that followed blurred together in a haze of learning and exhaustion. Eleanor woke before dawn and worked until after dark. She chopped wood until her arms felt like they would fall off. She learned to shoot, starting with targets nailed to trees and progressing to clay discs that Silas threw into the air. She practiced riding the way Western women rode, not side saddle like Charleston ladies, but astride with control and confidence. Her hands blistered, then calloused. Her muscles screamed, then strengthened. She ate more than she had ever eaten in her life and still lost weight, her body burning fuel as fast as she could consume it. And something else was changing too. The fear that had driven her across 3,000 miles was still there, but it had transformed. No longer a blind panic that made her want to run and keep running, but a sharp, focused determination. If Harrington came, she would be ready. On the 5th evening, Silas found her sitting on the porch of her cabin watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and crimson. You are different, he said, settling into the chair beside her. From when you arrived. I was half dead when I arrived. I do not mean physically. He turned to look at her. There is something in your eyes now, something that was not there before. Eleanor thought about it. In Charleston, she said slowly, I spent my whole life being told what I could and could not do, what was proper, what was expected, what a woman of my station should think and feel and want. And here no one has told me anything. She smiled. Well, no, that is not true. Here people tell me plenty. How to swing an axe, how to identify poison plants, how to shoot straight. She paused. But no one has told me who I am supposed to be. Silas nodded. That is the gift of this place, he said. You get to decide who you are, not your family, not society, you. Eleanor looked out at the wilderness. The endless trees, the distant peaks, the vast and uncaring beauty of a land that did not know or care about Charleston or its rules. "I think," she said, "I am starting to understand why you stay here. It is not for everyone." Silas's voice was soft. "The winters are brutal. The isolation can drive some people mad. You have to want this life, really want it, or it will break you." She turned to look at him, at his kind eyes and gentle smile and the silver threading through his auburn hair. "What do you want?" she asked. The question seemed to surprise him. "I want this." He gestured at the camp, the mountains, the sky. "I want my brothers safe and healthy. I want peace." He hesitated. I want to not be alone anymore." The last words came out barely above a whisper. Eleanor felt something shift in her chest, a wall that she had not even known she was building developing a crack. "You are not alone," she said. "You have Caleb and Jonas." "I know." Silas smiled, but there was sadness in it, "and I am grateful for them every day. But sometimes I think about what it might be like to have someone who chose to be here, not because of blood or obligation or shared history, but just because they wanted to." He shook his head. "Sorry, I should not have said that." "Why not?" "Because you have enough to worry about without an old doctor burdening you with his loneliness." He stood brushing off his pants. "Get some rest. Tomorrow Caleb wants to show you the Northern Trail." He walked away before she could respond. But that night, lying in her borrowed bed in her borrowed cabin, Eleanor could not stop thinking about what he had said. Someone who chose to be here. She had never really chosen anything in her life. Her path had been set before she was born, every step predetermined by family and society and expectation. Until now. Now, for the first time, she had choices. Real choices, with real consequences. And lying there in the darkness, listening to the wind in the pine trees and the distant howl of wolves, Eleanor Whitmore began to understand something she had never known before. Freedom was not just about running away from things. It was about running toward them. On the 6th day, Jonas found her practicing with the rifle Caleb had given her. She had been at it for an hour, her shoulder aching from the recoil, her eyes watering from the concentration. But she had hit the target 8 times out of 10 on her last round, and she was determined to make it 10 out of 10. "You are getting good," Jonas said. Eleanor lowered the rifle, surprised. Jonas rarely sought her out, rarely spoke more than absolutely necessary. "Thank you." She wiped sweat from her forehead. "I have a good teacher." Jonas nodded, stood silent for a moment. Then, "Can I show you something?" "Of course." He led her away from the camp along a trail she had not explored yet. They walked in silence for perhaps 15 minutes, climbing gradually until they emerged on a rocky outcrop that overlooked the entire valley. Eleanor gasped. Below them, the camp looked tiny, a cluster of cabins surrounded by endless green. Beyond it, the wilderness stretched to the horizon, mountains and forests and rivers and sky, an ocean of untamed land that seemed to go on forever. "This is why we stay," Jonas said. "This is what we built our lives to protect." Eleanor stared at the view, overwhelmed by its beauty and its vastness. "It is incredible," she whispered. "My mother used to talk about finding a place like this." Jonas's deep voice was soft, almost gentle. "A place where the world could not reach you, where you could just be. Is that why you came here? After the asylum?" Jonas was quiet for a long moment. "In the asylum," he said finally, "they tried to make me talk. Therapy, they called it. But what they really wanted was for me to be like everyone else, normal, acceptable. They did not understand that silence was not my problem. Silence was my solution. Solution to what? To the noise." Jonas tapped his chest. "In here. After my mother died, the noise got so loud I could not hear anything else. Silence was the only way to make it stop." Eleanor understood that more than she would have thought possible. The noise of expectations, of obligations, of everyone telling you who you were supposed to be. "How did you start talking again?" she asked. "Caleb." Jonas looked at the view. "When he and Silas found me, they did not try to make me speak. They just waited. Let me be silent. Let me find my own way back to words." He turned to look at her. "You remind me of that," he said. "You were silent inside when you arrived. Broken. But you are finding your voice again." Eleanor felt tears prick her eyes. "I do not know if I am finding my voice," she said, "or discovering I never had one to begin with." "Then find it." Jonas's dark eyes held hers. "Build it. Choose it. That is what freedom means." They stood together in silence, watching the sun climb higher over the mountains. And Eleanor felt something settle into place inside her, a certainty that had been missing for as long as she could remember. She did not want to run anymore. She wanted to stay. That evening, gathered around the fire in the main cabin, Eleanor told them. "If Harrington comes," she said, "I am not leaving." Caleb looked up from the trap he was mending. "We discussed this. If things go badly, you need to have an escape route. I am not running." Eleanor met his eyes. "Not again. This is the first place I have ever felt safe. The first place I have ever felt like myself. I will not abandon it because a monster from my past cannot accept that I do not belong to him." "Eleanor." "No." She stood planting her feet, squaring her shoulders. "You are ready to fight for me. Why should I not be ready to fight for myself? Because you are the one he wants." Silas's voice was strained. "If he gets you, everything we do is meaningless. Then help me make sure he does not get me." Silence. The three brothers looked at each other. Some kind of wordless communication passed between them, the same silent conversation she had witnessed before. Finally, Caleb spoke. "You understand what you are asking," he said. "This is not a game. If Harrington brings men, there will be violence. People will be hurt, maybe killed. I understand. And you are willing to accept that risk. For a place you have known for less than a week. For 3 men you barely know." Eleanor thought about Charleston, about the gilded cage she had lived in, the velvet chains that had bound her, the slow suffocation of a life that was not really hers. Then she thought about this place, the rough cabins and the endless wilderness, the hard work and the harder choices, the 3 men who had taken her in without question and taught her without condescension. "I know enough," she said. "I know that you saved my life. I know that you have given me more freedom in 6 days than I had in 23 years. I know that when I look at this place, I see something worth protecting. And when I look at you—" She paused suddenly, aware of how vulnerable she was making herself. "When I look at you," she continued quietly, "I see people I want to protect too." The fire crackled. Outside, an owl called into the darkness. Jonas stood, walked to the corner of the cabin, returned with a small wooden box that he set on the table. He opened it. Inside were 4 silver rings, simple bands, unadorned, beautiful in their plainness. "These were our mother's," Jonas said. "She left them for us, told us that when we found people worthy of them, we should share them." He looked at Eleanor. "We have waited a long time." Eleanor stared at the rings, at Jonas's solemn face, at Silas, who was watching her with something that looked terrifyingly like hope, at Caleb, whose amber eyes had softened in a way she had never seen. "I do not understand," she whispered. "You do." Caleb's voice was rough. "You understand exactly what we are saying. We are just asking if you feel the same." She should have been horrified. 3 men, 1 woman. Everything she had been taught said this was wrong, sinful, impossible. But everything she had been taught had also said she should marry Marcus Harrington and be grateful for the privilege. "What I was taught was wrong. I feel—" Eleanor's voice trembled. "I feel like I have been lost my entire life, and suddenly I have found a place where I fit. All 3 of you. I cannot explain it. You do not need to explain it." Silas rose, moved closer, but not too close. "You only need to choose it, if you want to. And if I do, then you stay." Jonas's deep voice was firm. "Not as a guest, as one of us. Not as something we protect," Caleb added. "As someone who stands beside us." Eleanor looked at the rings, at the 3 men waiting for her answer, with hope and fear in equal measure. She thought about Charleston and its rules. She thought about freedom and what it really meant. Then she reached out and took one of the silver rings from the box. "I choose this," she said. "I choose you, all of you." Jonas closed the box. Silas let out a breath he seemed to have been holding, and Caleb, the stoic, scarred leader who had shown so little emotion, smiled. "Then we face whatever comes together," he said. Outside, the wind picked up. Somewhere in the darkness, a wolf howled at the rising moon, and Eleanor Whitmore, who had run 3,000 miles to find herself, finally stopped running. But the world she had fled was not finished with her, and the storm that was coming would test everything they had built. 40 miles south of the Thornton camp, in a cramped hotel room in Millstone Junction, two men who should never have met were forging an alliance. Judge Marcus Harrington sat at the small writing desk, his silver hair immaculate, his black suit pressed despite weeks of travel. He looked absurdly out of place in this frontier town, like a peacock that had wandered into a chicken coop and refused to acknowledge the difference. Cornelius Blackwood sat across from him, a glass of whiskey in his hand. At 55, Blackwood had the look of a man who had clawed his way to wealth and intended to keep clawing until he owned everything in sight. His eyes held the cold calculation of someone who viewed other human beings as obstacles or tools, nothing more. Between them, Victor Crane stood by the window, watching the dusty street below. The tracker was 45 years old, lean and patient with the stillness of a predator waiting for prey. "You want the girl," Blackwood said, swirling his whiskey. "I want the land, and both of us want the Thorntons out of our way." Harrington smiled, but the expression never reached his gray eyes. "It seems we have common interests. I have been trying to buy that land for 2 years. Blackwood set down his glass with more force than necessary. "Those 3 stubborn fools are sitting on one of the richest copper deposits in the territory, and they will not sell for any price, because they do not want money." "Then what do they want?" Harrington leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "They want to be left alone. They want their precious freedom." His lip curled with contempt. "Men like that are the most dangerous kind. They have nothing to lose because they have already decided that what they have is worth more than anything you could offer." Crane spoke without turning from the window. "I found the camp yesterday, watched it for several hours before coming back. 3 men, well-armed, experienced. The woman is there. She looks healthy. They have been teaching her things. What kind of things? How to shoot, how to ride, how to survive." Crane finally turned his weathered face expressionless. She hit 8 out of 10 targets at 50 yards, with a rifle she had never touched 2 weeks ago. Harrington's eyes narrowed. Eleanor always was a quick learner. Such a waste. All that intelligence, all that spirit, and she insists on using it to defy me. You could simply let her go." Blackwood shrugged. "Find another bride. There are plenty of young women in Charleston who would be thrilled to marry a judge." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. "Let her go." Harrington's voice was soft, almost gentle, which made it more frightening than if he had shouted. "Eleanor belongs to me. She was promised to me by her father. She was wearing my ring when she ran. No one takes what is mine and escapes." Blackwood raised an eyebrow but said nothing. He knew obsession when he saw it, and he knew better than to get between an obsessed man and his target. "How many men do you have?" Harrington asked. 12. Armed, experienced, loyal to whoever pays them." Blackwood finished his whiskey. "I can have them ready to move in 2 days. That should be more than enough. There are only 3 men at that camp, and 1 woman." Harrington shook his head. "Do not underestimate the Thorntons. I have done my research. Caleb Thornton was a captain in the army before he deserted. He killed 6 men during his escape. Silas Thornton may look soft, but he was raised by the same brutal father as his brothers. And Jonas?" Harrington paused. "Jonas Thornton spent 4 years in an asylum for the violently insane before his brothers broke him out." Crane stirred. "I did not see any signs of insanity. Just a very large, very quiet man who moves like a ghost. The quiet ones are the most dangerous." Harrington stood walking to the window beside Crane. "We need to be smart about this. A direct assault will get people killed, and while I do not particularly care about your hired guns, I do care about staying out of prison. What do you suggest? We need legal cover." Harrington pulled a folded document from his coat pocket. "I have a warrant for Eleanor's arrest. Theft of valuable property. It is signed by a judge, which means it carries the weight of law. A judge being yourself, Blackwood said dryly. The signature is legitimate enough to survive casual scrutiny, and by the time anyone looks closely, this will be over. What about the territorial authorities? There is a marshal named Fletcher who has jurisdiction over this area. My sources say he is honest. Honest men can be delayed. Harrington smiled his cold smile. We simply need to move faster than he does. Blackwood stood, extending his hand. Then we have a deal. I get the land. You get the girl. The Thorntons get whatever is coming to them. Harrington shook the offered hand. A pleasure doing business with you, Mr. Blackwood. Outside the window, the sun was setting over Millstone Junction. The shadows were growing long, reaching toward the mountains where Eleanor Thornton was learning to shoot and ride and fight. The storm was coming, and it would arrive sooner than anyone expected. Back at the camp, Eleanor was discovering something unexpected about herself. She was happy. It seemed impossible. She was hiding from a murderous judge, living in a primitive cabin in the wilderness, surrounded by 3 men she had known for barely a week. By every measure of her old life, she should have been miserable. Instead, she woke each morning with energy she had never felt before. She worked until her muscles ached, ate until she was full, slept without nightmares. The constant low-level anxiety that had been her companion since childhood was fading, replaced by something she barely recognized: peace. On the morning of her 7th day at the camp, she was helping Silas sort through dried herbs when he suddenly laughed. What, she asked? You are humming. Eleanor realized he was right. She had been humming an old melody without even noticing. I used to do that as a child, she said, before my mother told me it was unladylike. Silas shook his head. The things they teach women. Do not hum. Do not laugh too loud. Do not have opinions. It is a wonder any of you survive. Some of us do not. Eleanor thought of the Harrington wives of their mysterious deaths. Some of us do not survive at all. Silas's smile faded. He reached out, hesitated, then gently touched her arm. You survived, he said. You are surviving. And as long as we are breathing, you will continue to survive. Eleanor looked at his hand on her arm. A month ago, any unexpected male touch would have made her flinch. Now she felt only warmth. May I ask you something? She said. Anything. Last night when Jonas brought out the rings, what did that mean exactly? I know what I said, what I chose, but I am not sure I understand what I chose. Silas withdrew his hand slowly, giving her space. It means whatever you want it to mean, he said carefully. We are not trying to trap you, Eleanor. We are not trying to own you. We are just saying that if you want to stay, there is a place for you here, a real place. Not as a guest or a refugee, but as family. Family. The word hit her harder than she expected. I have never really had family, she said quietly. My parents saw me as an asset to be traded. My aunts and uncles were strangers. The only person who ever truly cared about me was Ruth, and she was a servant. Then perhaps it is time you experienced what family should feel like. Silas's green eyes were warm. We are not perfect, Eleanor. We are 3 broken men who have spent years putting ourselves back together. But we know how to care for each other. We can learn how to care for you, too. Eleanor felt tears threatening and blinked them back. And if I cannot be what you need, she asked, if I am too damaged, too afraid, too shaped by Charleston and its rules, then we will wait. Silas smiled. We have been waiting our whole lives. A little longer will not hurt. Before Eleanor could respond, the sound of footsteps interrupted them. Jonas appeared in the doorway, his face grim. Caleb needs you both, he said. Now. They found Caleb in the main cabin, standing over the long table where a map had been spread. His jaw was tight, his amber eyes hard. Maggie sent a rider, he said without preamble. Harrington left Millstone Junction this morning. He has men with him. How many? Silas asked. At least 12, plus Blackwood and the tracker Crane. Eleanor felt the blood drain from her face. 15 men, against 3. When will they get here? If they are moving fast, they could reach us by tonight. Caleb traced a route on the map. More likely tomorrow morning. The trails are rough and they do not know this territory like we do. What do we do?" Caleb looked up at her. His expression was unreadable, but she could see the calculation behind his eyes. "We have options," he said. "We can run, take the northern pass, lose ourselves in the mountains. They would never find us." "No." The word came out harder than Eleanor intended. All three brothers looked at her. "I am not running anymore." She stepped forward, planting her hands on the table. "I spent 6 weeks running. I am tired of it. If Harrington wants me, he can come and try to take me." Eleanor Silas said gently, "There are 15 of them, and 4 of us. You have been learning to shoot for less than a week. Then I will have to learn faster." She looked at Caleb. "What are the other options?" Caleb studied her for a long moment. Whatever he saw in her face must have satisfied him because he nodded slowly. "We make a stand. We fortify the camp and force them to come to us." He pointed at the map. "They have to approach through the valley. That means we see them coming long before they arrive. If we position ourselves right, we can hold them off." "For how long?" "Long enough for Maggie to get word to Marshal Fletcher. He is a day's ride from here, but if he comes, Harrington loses his legal cover. A warrant from a South Carolina judge means nothing if a federal marshal says it is invalid. And if Fletcher does not come in time," Caleb's jaw tightened, "then we fight until we cannot fight any more." The room fell silent. The weight of what they were facing settled over them like a physical presence. Jonas spoke first. "I will check the perimeter. Set up warning traps on the southern approach." "Good." Caleb turned to Silas. "Inventory the weapons and ammunition. I want to know exactly what we have." "What about me?" Eleanor asked. Caleb looked at her. "You rest. Eat. Prepare yourself mentally for what is coming." He held up a hand when she started to protest. "You have been training hard for days. If we are going to fight, you need to be at your best. That means getting some sleep while you can." Eleanor wanted to argue. She wanted to be doing something, anything, rather than waiting. But she could see the logic in his words. "Fine," she said, "but wake me if anything changes. You have my word." She started toward the door, then stopped. "Caleb." "Yes, thank you." She turned to face all three of them. "All of you, I know you did not ask for this. I know I have brought danger to your doorstep. But I want you to know that whatever happens, I do not regret coming here. These have been the best days of my life." She left before she could see their reactions. But if she had looked back, she would have seen three brothers exchanging glances that said everything words could not. They would die before they let Harrington take her. And they were beginning to suspect they might have to. Eleanor did try to sleep, but her mind would not quiet. She lay on the narrow bed in Silas's cabin, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of preparation outside. Footsteps, the clink of metal, low voices speaking too quietly to make out words. After an hour of restless tossing, she gave up and went to the window. The camp looked different now. Jonas had placed bundles of branches across the main approaches, not barriers but markers that would rustle if anyone tried to pass. Caleb was on the roof of the main cabin scanning the valley with a spyglass. Silas was carrying boxes of ammunition from the storage shed. They were preparing for war, because of her. Eleanor pressed her hand against the cold glass, watching the men who had become her family move with grim efficiency. They should not have to do this. They should be living their quiet lives, hunting and trapping, and building, not fortifying, against an army. She could end it. The thought came unbidden, and once it arrived, she could not shake it. If she left now, slipped away while they were distracted, she could draw Harrington away from the camp, lead him somewhere else, somewhere the Thorntons would not be in danger. She could sacrifice herself to save them. Her hand was on the door latch when a voice spoke from behind her. "I know what you are thinking." She spun around. Jonas stood in the shadows of the room so still that she had not even noticed him enter. "You are thinking about running," he continued, "drawing Harrington away, sacrificing yourself so we do not have to fight." Eleanor swallowed hard. "It would work. If I am not here, he has no reason to attack you." Jonas moved closer. Despite his size, his footsteps made no sound. "It would not work," he said. "Harrington already knows you were here. If you run, he will still come for us to find out where you went, and then he will hunt you down anyway. But there is a chance. There is no chance. Jonas's dark eyes held hers. He is not going to stop, Eleanor. Not ever. Men like him do not accept defeat. They do not forgive defiance. The only way this ends is if he is stopped. You mean killed. I mean stopped. Jonas's voice was flat without emotion. However, that needs to happen. Eleanor looked at this massive, quiet man who had spent 13 years in silence, who had survived an asylum and emerged still capable of gentleness. I do not want anyone to die because of me, she whispered. Then, stay alive. Jonas reached out, and for the first time he touched her voluntarily. His huge hand cupped her face with surprising tenderness. Stay alive, and make sure his death means something. Make sure you build a life worth all of this. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone. We chose this, Eleanor. All three of us. When we decided to help you, we knew the risks. This is not your fault. This is his fault, and we are going to make him answer for it. Eleanor felt tears sliding down her face. I am scared, she admitted. Good. Jonas almost smiled. Scared means you understand what is happening. Only fools are not scared before a fight. Have you been scared before fights every time? Jonas dropped his hand from her face. But I learned something in the asylum during all those years of silence. Fear is not the enemy. Fear is a messenger. It tells you something matters. The trick is not to ignore fear, but to thank it for the warning and then do what needs to be done anyway. Eleanor wiped her eyes. That is surprisingly philosophical for a man who does not talk. This time Jonas definitely smiled. I had 13 years to think. I developed a lot of philosophy. Despite everything, Eleanor laughed. It was a weak, watery sound, but it was real. Will you teach me, she asked, how to be scared and still fight? Jonas held out his hand. That is exactly what we are going to do. The rest of the day passed in a blur of activity. Jonas took Eleanor to the edge of the camp and showed her things that the others had not covered. How to move silently through brush. How to make yourself small behind cover. How to control your breathing when terror made you want to gasp. Stay low, he said, always. A standing target is a dead target. She practiced crawling through grass until her elbows were raw. If you have to shoot, pick your target. One shot, one hit. You do not have enough ammunition to waste on hoping. She practiced breathing, aiming, squeezing the trigger. Breathing, aiming, squeezing. And if everything goes wrong, Jonas said, looking at her steadily, if Caleb and Silas and I all go down, you run. Do you understand? You run north through the pass, and you do not stop until you reach the next settlement. I already told you I am not running. This is different. Jonas's voice was hard. This is the last resort. If we are dead, staying to fight will not save us. It will just mean you die too. And our deaths will have meant nothing. Eleanor wanted to argue, but she could see the implacable certainty in his eyes. Promise me, he said. I promise. The words tasted like ash in her mouth. If it comes to that, I will run. Good. He turned away, and Eleanor saw his shoulders sag slightly, as if making her promise had cost him something. Jonas. He stopped, but did not turn around. I am glad I found you, she said, all three of you. Whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know that. He stood motionless for a long moment. We found you, he said finally, and we are glad too. Then he walked away, leaving her alone with her fear and her promise and the setting sun. Night fell slowly, as if the darkness was reluctant to arrive. The four of them gathered in the main cabin for what might be their last peaceful meal. Silas had cooked venison steaks using the last of the fresh meat. No point in saving it now. They ate in near silence, each lost in their own thoughts. The fire crackled. Outside, the wind whispered through the pines. Finally, Caleb spoke. Here is the plan for tomorrow. He spread a hand-drawn diagram on the table. Jonas will take position on the ridge to the south. High ground, good sight lines. He can see them coming and thin them out before they reach the camp. Jonas nodded. Silas will be in the workshop building. Good cover angles on the main approach. He can catch anyone who makes it past Jonas. Understood. I will be in the main cabin covering the door and the approaches from the east. Caleb looked at Eleanor. You will be with me, because I am the one they want, because you are the one we are protecting. His amber eyes were steady. And because if they breach the cabin they will expect to find you. We can use that, as bait, as a surprise. Caleb almost smiled. They will not expect you to be armed and ready. That gives us an advantage. Eleanor thought about it. The logic was sound even if the prospect was terrifying. What if they try to negotiate? She asked. They will not. Harrington sent a letter once demanding I return. He talked about being reasonable. That was before you humiliated him by running. Before you shot down his self-image as a man who always gets what he wants. Caleb shook his head. Men like Harrington do not negotiate. They take. If he offers to talk, it will be a trick to get you to lower your guard. Then what do we do when they arrive? We wait for them to make the first move. We respond with overwhelming force, and we pray that Fletcher arrives before we run out of ammunition. The silence stretched. Silas cleared his throat. On a lighter note, he said, I found something while sorting supplies. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small bottle of amber liquid. Whiskey. The good stuff. I have been saving it for a special occasion. He looked around the table. This seems special enough. He poured 4 glasses, passing them around. Caleb raised his glass. To the people worth fighting for. To the places worth defending. Silas added. To choosing our own path. Jonas rumbled. Everyone looked at Eleanor. She raised her glass, her hand only trembling slightly. To family, she said, however we find it. They drank. The whiskey burned, going down, spreading warmth through Eleanor's chest. She was not much of a drinker, had barely touched alcohol in Charleston, but tonight it felt appropriate. Tonight they needed warmth, however they could get it. Eleanor, Silas said, Would you like to hear some music? She blinked. Now. Why not? He shrugged. If this is our last night, we might as well spend it doing something beautiful. He stood and retrieved his violin from its case by the fire. The instrument was old, well-worn, clearly cherished. Silas began to play. The melody was slow, haunting, filled with longing and loss, and something that might have been hope. It wound through the cabin like smoke, filling the spaces between them, saying things that words could not express. Eleanor watched his fingers move across the strings, watched his face transform as the music took him somewhere else. In that moment he was not a man preparing for battle. He was an artist creating beauty in the face of destruction. My mother taught me this song, Silas said without stopping his playing. She said it was about finding home, about searching your whole life for a place to belong and finally discovering it in the last place you expected. His eyes found Eleanor's. I think I finally understand what she meant. The music swelled, then faded, leaving silence that felt sacred. No one spoke. Finally, Caleb stood. We should get some rest, he said. Dawn will come early. Eleanor did not move. I do not think I can sleep, she admitted. Try anyway. You will need your strength. She rose reluctantly, setting down her empty whiskey glass. Silas placed his violin back in its case. Jonas banked the fire. At the door, Eleanor stopped. Will one of you stay with me? She asked quietly. I know it is not appropriate. I know what Charleston would say. But I do not want to be alone tonight. The brothers looked at each other. I will walk you to your cabin, Caleb said. Make sure you get settled. But once they reached the cabin, Eleanor found she could not let him leave. Please, she said, just for a while. I promise I will not ask for anything inappropriate. I just want someone close. Caleb stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the starlight. There is nothing inappropriate about comfort, he said finally. Not when people face what we are facing. He came inside, sat in the chair by the window. Eleanor lay down on the bed, pulling the blankets over herself. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Then Eleanor asked, Are you afraid? Yes. Of dying. Of failing. Caleb's voice was quiet. Of not being able to protect the people I care about. I have failed before, Eleanor. in the war. I gave orders that got good men killed. I made choices that haunt me still." Caleb paused. "I cannot fail again." "You will not fail. You cannot know that." "Number." Eleanor turned to face him, though she could barely make out his features in the darkness. "But I know that you will try. I know that you will do everything in your power to protect us. And that is all anyone can ask." Is it enough Eleanor thought about her father, who had never tried to protect her, about Harrington, who had tried to possess her, about all the men in her life who had seen her as property to be managed rather than a person to be cherished? It is everything she said. Caleb was silent for a long moment. "Eleanor." "Yes. Whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know something." He shifted in his chair. "Meeting you is the first thing in years that has made me believe the world might not be completely dark." Caleb stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. "I am not good at this, at talking about feelings. Jonas is right that I spent too many years turning myself to stone. You do not have to say anything." "Yes, I do, because if something happens tomorrow, I need you to know." He took a breath. "You asked what those rings meant. What we meant when we said there was a place for you here. I cannot speak for my brothers, though I suspect they feel the same. But for me it means that I want you to stay, not just until Harrington is dealt with. Forever. I want to wake up every morning knowing you are here. I want to build something with you, something lasting, something real. Caleb, I know it is not proper. I know the world would condemn us. 3 men and 1 woman living together, caring for each other in ways that society says are wrong. But I stopped caring about society's rules a long time ago, and I think you have stopped caring too." Eleanor sat up in bed. "Come here," she said. Caleb rose slowly, crossed to the bed, sat on the edge close enough that she could see his face in the dim light from the stars. She reached out and touched his scar. The raised line of flesh that ran from temple to jaw, the evidence of violence, survived. "I stopped caring about society's rules the moment I kicked a judge in the groin and ran for my life," she said. "I stopped believing in appropriate when I realized that appropriate meant staying quiet while a monster prepared to destroy me." Her hand moved to cup his face. "What I feel for you," she continued, "for all 3 of you is not appropriate. It is not proper. It does not fit any category that Charleston would recognize. But it is real. It is the realest thing I have ever felt. And if we survive tomorrow, I want to find out what it can become." Caleb turned his head, pressed his lips to her palm. "If we survive tomorrow," he said, "I will spend every day showing you what it can become." They stayed like that for a long moment, connected by touch and promise and the darkness that surrounded them. Then Caleb pulled back. "Sleep," he said. "I will be here. I will wake you if anything changes." Eleanor lay back down, but she kept her hand-extended fingers intertwined with his. And somehow, against all odds, she slept. Dawn came gray and cold. Eleanor woke to the sound of movement outside, the low murmur of voices, the creak of boots on wooden steps. Caleb was no longer beside her, but she could see through the window that he was on the porch talking with his brothers. She rose quickly, dressed in the practical clothes they had given her, laced the boots that Jonas had found somewhere strapped on the belt with the holstered pistol. When she stepped outside, the 3 brothers turned to look at her. "They are coming," Caleb said. Jonas spotted them at first light, maybe an hour away, moving slow and cautious. "How many 15? Caleb's jaw was tight. "Just like Maggie said, plus Harrington and Blackwood and the tracker. 18 men. Against 4. "Everyone knows their positions?" Caleb asked. Nods all around. "Jonas, you head out first. Get set up before they can see you moving." Jonas turned to Eleanor. His dark eyes held hers for a long moment. "Remember your promise," he said. Then he was gone, vanishing into the trees like a ghost. Silas checked his rifle one more time. "If I do not get a chance to say it later," he told Eleanor, "meeting you was the best thing that ever happened to me, to all of us." He followed his brother, heading for the workshop building. And then it was just Eleanor and Caleb standing on the porch of the main cabin, watching the sun rise over the mountains. "Are you ready?" he asked. "No." Eleanor drew her pistol, checked that it was loaded, holstered it again. "But I am going to fight anyway. That is all any of us can do." They went inside. Caleb positioned himself by the window, rifle ready. Eleanor took up her place behind an overturned table that would provide cover, and they waited. The first sign was the birds. They went silent all at once, the normal chorus of morning song cutting off as if someone had thrown a switch. Eleanor had learned enough about the wilderness to know what that meant. Something was coming. Then she heard the hoofbeats. Not galloping. Slow, deliberate, the sound of men who knew they had superiority in numbers and were not worried about surprise. The first riders emerged from the tree line. Eleanor counted as they appeared. 5, 10, 15. Behind them, 2 more figures on horseback, one in an expensive black suit that she recognized even at this distance. Harrington. Her stomach clenched. Her hands wanted to shake. She did not let them. The riders stopped at the edge of the camp clearing. One of them, a hard-faced man with a badge pinned to his chest, rode forward a few paces. "Caleb Thornton," he called out. "This is Deputy Sheriff Mills from Millstone Junction. I have a warrant for the arrest of Eleanor Whitmore, wanted for theft in the state of South Carolina. Send her out, and there does not need to be any trouble." Caleb did not move from the window. "That warrant has no jurisdiction here," he called back. "This is Idaho territory. South Carolina law does not apply. I have been deputized by Judge Harrington to assist in the execution of this warrant. That gives me federal authority. Judge Harrington is the one who signed the warrant. He is hardly an impartial party." The deputy's face darkened. "I am not here to debate legal technicalities. Send out the woman or we come in and take her." Caleb raised his rifle. "Then come ahead, but know that you will be burying men today." Silence stretched. Then a new voice spoke, smooth and cultured and dripping with false reasonableness. "Eleanor, my dear." Harrington rode forward, positioning himself beside the deputy. Even from a distance, Eleanor could see his cold gray eyes, his perfect silver hair, his expression of patient condescension. "This has gone on long enough," he continued. "You have made your point. You are spirited and independent and unwilling to be controlled. I admire that truly. But the game is over now. Come back with me, and I promise all will be forgiven. We can start fresh, build something wonderful together." Eleanor stood up from behind the table. She walked to the window, standing beside Caleb, making sure Harrington could see her. "Marcus," she called back, her voice clear and steady. "I would rather die in this cabin than spend another moment in your presence. I would rather be shot, stabbed, burned alive, than ever let you touch me again." She saw Harrington's face contort with rage before he forced it back into its mask of calm. "You do not mean that," he said. "I have never meant anything more in my entire life. You are a murderer. You killed your wives, and you would have killed me too. The only thing I regret is not kicking you harder." Beside her, Caleb made a sound that might have been a suppressed laugh. Harrington's mask slipped further. "You will regret this," he snarled. "When I am finished with you, you will beg for death. Then come and try to finish me." She stepped back from the window, returning to her position behind the table. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Harrington turned to Blackwood and nodded. "Take them." The attack began. Jonas opened fire first from his position on the ridge. His first shot took down one of the riders before they even realized where it came from. His second shot hit another man in the shoulder, spinning him off his horse. The attackers scattered, diving for cover, returning fire blindly toward the trees. Silas joined in from the workshop, his rifle cracking with methodical precision. Another man went down, then another. Caleb fired from the cabin window, his shots measured and accurate. Eleanor watched, waiting, her pistol in her hand. The attackers regrouped, using their horses as cover, advancing toward the buildings in a ragged line. They were taking casualties, but they had numbers on their side. "They are trying to flank Jonas," Caleb said. "Keep them pinned down." Eleanor moved to a side window, saw men trying to circle around toward the ridge. She fired once, twice. Missed the first time. The second shot caught a man in the leg. It was the first time she had ever shot a human being. She expected to feel horror, revulsion. Instead, she felt only a cold determination. These men were trying to kill the people she loved. She would not let them. The battle raged on. Minutes felt like hours. The cabin filled with gun smoke. Eleanor's ears rang from the constant thunder of firearms. She fired, reloaded, fired again. Somewhere in the chaos, she heard Silas shout in pain. She could not see him from her position, did not know if he was hurt badly or just grazed. Then she heard something worse. Silence from the ridge. Jonas Caleb called out. No response. Caleb's face went pale. "Cover the door," he told Eleanor. "I need to check on Silas." But before he could move, the cabin door burst open. 3 men poured through, guns raised. Eleanor fired without thinking, dropped the first one before he could get his weapon up. Caleb shot the second. The third tackled Caleb, and they went down in a tangle of limbs. Eleanor tried to aim, but they were too close together. She could not get a clean shot. "Run!" Caleb shouted. Eleanor run, but she could not run, could not abandon him. She did the only thing she could think of. She charged. The impact caught the attacker off guard. Eleanor hit him from the side, throwing him off Caleb, sending all 3 of them sprawling. The man recovered faster than she expected. His hand closed around her throat. Eleanor clawed at his fingers, gasping for air. Black spots danced in her vision. Then Caleb was there, slamming the butt of his rifle into the man's skull. The grip loosened. Eleanor scrambled free. The man did not get up again. "Are you all right?" Caleb asked, breathing hard. Before she could answer, another shape appeared in the doorway. Victor Crane. The tracker stood silhouetted against the daylight, a pistol in each hand. "The judge wants her alive," he said calmly. "But he did not say anything about you." He raised his weapons, and Jonas Thornton, bleeding from a wound in his side, hit him from behind like a charging bull. They crashed through the doorway together, rolling across the porch. Crane tried to bring his guns to bear, but Jonas was too close, too strong, too filled with fury. Eleanor watched in horrified fascination as Jonas systematically beat the tracker into unconsciousness. Each blow was measured, precise, devastating. When Crane finally stopped moving, Jonas stood up slowly. He looked at Eleanor. "Told you I would not let them take you," he said. Then his eyes rolled back and he collapsed. "Jonas!" Eleanor screamed. She ran to him, Caleb right behind her. Blood was soaking through Jonas's shirt, spreading in an alarming pool. "We need to get him inside," Caleb said. "Find Silas." As if summoned, Silas appeared around the corner of the cabin. His left arm hung at an awkward angle, clearly broken, but he was alive. "What happened?" he gasped when he saw Jonas. "Shot." Eleanor was pressing her hands against the wound, trying to stop the bleeding. "We need to stop this. We need—" She looked up and saw Marcus Harrington walking toward them across the clearing. Behind him came Blackwood and 4 remaining men, the survivors of the assault. They had guns trained on the cabin. "This ends now," Harrington said. His gray eyes were wild, his composure finally shattered. Blood flecked his expensive suit from someone else's wounds. "Eleanor, stand up." She did not move. "I said stand up." He raised his pistol, aimed it at Jonas's unconscious form. "Or I put another bullet in this one." Eleanor stood slowly. "Good." Harrington smiled, but it was the smile of a man teetering on the edge of madness. "Now walk toward me. Slowly. No sudden movements." Eleanor looked at Caleb, at Silas, at Jonas bleeding on the ground. "If I come with you," she said carefully, "do you promise to let them live?" Harrington laughed. "I do not have to promise you anything. You do not have bargaining power. You have nothing. I have information." Eleanor kept her voice steady. "About your wives, about what really happened to them. I heard you confessing at the engagement party. I could testify against you. No court would believe you. Then you have nothing to worry about. But I know people in Charleston. The right word in the right ear and questions start being asked. Investigations start happening." Eleanor held his gaze. "Let them live and I will stay quiet. Kill them and I will bring you down even if I have to destroy myself to do it." Harrington's eyes narrowed. He was thinking. She could see the calculation happening behind his rage. "Fine," he said finally. "They live. But you come with me. Now." Eleanor started forward. No. Silas tried to rise, but his broken arm made him clumsy. Caleb caught him, held him back. "Eleanor, do not do this," Caleb said. She looked at him one last time. "Remember what I said, about what these days have meant to me." She tried to smile. Whatever happens, that was real. She turned away before she could see his face. Step by step she walked toward Marcus Harrington, toward the monster who had haunted her nightmares, toward the end of everything she had fought for. She was 10 feet away when the sound of hoofbeats thundered through the clearing. "Hold!" a voice bellowed. "In the name of the law, everyone hold!" Marshal Thomas Fletcher charged into view, followed by 6 men wearing the badges of territorial deputies. The marshal was 62 years old, with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. He took in the scene with a single sweeping glance. Bodies on the ground, weapons raised, a woman walking toward a man with madness in his eyes. Judge Harrington Fletcher said, his voice like iron, "You are under arrest." Harrington's face contorted. "On what charges? Assault, attempted murder, conspiracy to commit kidnapping." Fletcher dismounted, his hand resting on his pistol. "And when I get the telegram I am expecting from Charleston, probably murder as well. This is an outrage. I am a sitting judge." "Not anymore." Fletcher nodded to his deputies. They moved forward, surrounding Harrington and his remaining men. "As of this morning you have been suspended pending investigation. It seems some of your former household staff have decided to talk." Harrington went white. "That is impossible. They would never." "People talk when they are scared," Fletcher said, "and when they learn that the man they feared is no longer untouchable." He looked at Eleanor. "Miss Whitmore, I presume." Eleanor had stopped walking. Her legs felt like they might give out at any moment. "Yes," she managed. "Are you injured?" "No." She looked back at the cabin, at Caleb and Silas, at Jonas still bleeding on the ground. "But they are. Please, we need help." Fletcher barked orders to his men. 2 of them ran toward the cabin with medical supplies. Then the marshal turned back to Harrington. "You have the right to remain silent," he said. "I suggest you exercise it." Eleanor watched as they put Harrington in chains, watched as the light of hope died in his gray eyes and was replaced by the dawning understanding of defeat, watched as the monster who had haunted her for so long was led away like a common criminal. And then her legs finally gave out, and she sat down hard in the dirt of the clearing, and she began to cry. Not tears of fear, not tears of grief, tears of relief. It was over. It was finally over. Hours later, when Jonas had been stabilized and the wounded had been tended to, Marshal Fletcher found Eleanor sitting on the porch of the main cabin. "Hell of a fight you put up," he said, settling into the chair beside her. "We did what we had to do." "That you did." Fletcher was quiet for a moment. "Maggie told me about you, about how you came here, what you were running from. She said you were worth saving. Maggie is a good woman. She is." Fletcher looked out at the clearing where his deputies were still cleaning up the aftermath. "I am going to need statements from all of you, for the official record. But between us, I do not think anyone is going to face charges for what happened here today." He paused. "Self-defense is self-defense." "What about Harrington?" Fletcher's face hardened. "The evidence against him is mounting. 3 dead wives, patterns of abuse that go back decades. Once he was no longer protected by his position, people started talking." Fletcher shook his head. "Men like him always think they are untouchable. They never understand that power is borrowed, not owned. Eventually the loan comes due. Will he hang? Probably not. More likely he will spend the rest of his life in prison watching the world go on without him." Fletcher smiled grimly. "For a man like Harrington, that might be worse than the rope." Eleanor felt something loosen in her chest that she had not even known was tight. And Blackwood facing charges of his own. Conspiracy, assault, attempted murder. His mining company is going to have to find someone else to run things. The cabin door opened behind them. Caleb emerged, his arm in a sling, his face bruised but unbowed. "Jonas is awake," he said, asking for Eleanor. She rose immediately. "Go," Fletcher said. "I will be here when you are ready to give your statement." The cabin was dim and warm, the fire crackling low. Silas sat in a chair by the bed, his broken arm splinted and bound against his chest. And on the bed, propped up on pillows, Jonas Thornton looked like death warmed over. But his dark eyes were alert, and when he saw Eleanor, something that might have been a smile crossed his face. "You stayed," he said. His voice was weak but clear. "You told me to run. You did not listen." Eleanor sat on the edge of the bed, careful not to jostle him. "I am not very good at doing what I am told." She took his uninjured hand. "How do you feel? Like I got shot?" Jonas's fingers tightened around hers. "But I will live." "Silas says the bullet missed everything vital." "Barely," Silas muttered. "Another inch, and we would be having a very different conversation." Eleanor looked at the three brothers, battered, bloodied, broken in various ways, but alive. All of them alive. "I thought I had lost you," she whispered, "when you stopped responding from the ridge, when you fell after fighting Crane. I thought—" Jonas reached up with his free hand, touched her face. "You will not lose us that easily," he said. "We made a promise. Remember, you are one of us now." "I remember." "Then believe it." Jonas's dark eyes held hers. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." Caleb moved to stand beside the bed, his good hand coming to rest on Eleanor's shoulder. "Fletcher says we are clear," he said. "No charges. Self-defense. And Harrington gone. Being transported to stand trial in Charleston. His days of hurting anyone are over." Eleanor closed her eyes. For the first time since she had fled that engagement party, she felt something she had almost forgotten how to recognize. Peace. True, complete, bone-deep peace. "It is over," she said. Silas reached out with his good hand, placed it over hers, and Jonas's intertwined fingers. "No," he said gently. "It is just beginning." The weeks that followed the battle passed in a haze of healing. Jonas was bedridden for the first 10 days, his massive frame reduced to stillness while his body fought to repair what the bullet had damaged. Silas tended to him with the expertise of his abandoned medical training, changing bandages, monitoring for infection, forcing broth and water when Jonas tried to refuse. Eleanor rarely left his side. She read to him from the few books in the cabin. She told him stories about Charleston, about the absurd rituals of high society, about the women who wore corsets so tight they could not breathe and considered it a mark of status. She made him laugh, which hurt his wound but seemed to help his spirit. And when he slept, she sat by the window and watched the autumn colors spread across the mountains, thinking about everything that had happened and everything that might come next. Caleb healed faster. His wounds had been superficial, more bruises than anything serious, and within a week he was back to his usual routines. Checking the perimeter, hunting for fresh meat, maintaining the buildings that had taken damage during the fight. But Eleanor noticed that he moved differently now. There was a lightness to his step that had not been there before, as if some weight had been lifted from his shoulders. One evening, while Jonas slept and Silas dozed in his chair, Caleb found Eleanor on the porch. "You should be resting," he said. "I have been resting. I am tired of resting." He sat down beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "How is he better?" "Silas says he will be up and moving in another week." Eleanor smiled slightly. "He is already complaining about being confined to bed. That is usually a good sign. Jonas does not do stillness well. No, he does not." They sat in companionable silence, watching the stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky. Caleb said finally, "Yes, I need to tell you something." She turned to look at him, saw the uncertainty in his amber eyes. "Before all of this happened, before Harrington came, I said some things. About wanting you to stay. About what you mean to me." He paused, struggling with words that did not come easily. "I meant all of it. But I want you to know that there is no obligation. You are free now. Harrington cannot touch you. You could go anywhere, do anything, be anyone you want to be." Eleanor felt her heart constrict. "Are you asking me to leave?" Caleb's voice was rough. "I am asking if you want to stay. Really want to. Not because you are hiding, not because you have nowhere else to go, but because this is where you choose to be." She reached out and took his hand. His fingers were calloused, scarred, the hands of a man who had built his life with his own 2 hands. "Caleb," she said softly, "I spent 23 years being told where to go, what to do, who to be. I ran 3,000 miles to escape a future that someone else had chosen for me." She squeezed his hand. "Do you really think I would stay somewhere I did not want to be?" "That is not an answer." "Yes, it is." She turned to face him fully. "I am here because I want to be here. I am staying because there is nowhere else on earth I would rather be. Not Charleston, not anywhere back east, not anywhere in the whole wide world." She lifted her free hand to his face, traced the scar that ran from temple to jaw. "I love this place," she continued. "I love what you and your brothers have built here. I love the mountains and the trees and the way the stars look at night when there are no city lights to dim them." She paused. "And I love you. All 3 of you. I know that is not normal. I know the world would say it is wrong, but I have stopped caring what the world says." Caleb was very still. "You love us," he repeated. "I love you," Eleanor confirmed. "And Silas. And Jonas. Not the same way, not identical, but all of it real. All of it true." She met his eyes. "Is that so hard to believe? I have spent most of my life believing I did not deserve to be loved. Then let me spend the rest of mine proving you wrong." She leaned forward and kissed him. It was not her first kiss. There had been a few stolen moments in Charleston, awkward experiments with young men her mother did not approve of, but those had been nothing compared to this. This was fire. Caleb's response was hesitant at first, as if he was afraid of breaking something fragile. Then his hand came up to cup the back of her head, and the hesitation burned away. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. "I have wanted to do that since the moment I saw you," Caleb admitted. "What took you so long? I did not want to be like him, like Harrington, taking what I wanted without asking." Eleanor felt her heart swell. "You could never be like him," she said. "Never. He took. You give. He destroyed. You protect. He saw me as property. You see me as a person." She kissed him again, briefer this time. "Now stop being noble and help me figure out how this is going to work. Because I suspect your brothers feel the same way you do, and I need to understand what that means." Caleb pulled back slightly, studying her face. "You would want that. All 3 of us. I do not know what I want yet." Eleanor was honest. "This is new territory for me. I have never had the freedom to want anything, let alone something this unconventional." She took a breath. "But I know I do not want to choose between you. I know that the thought of hurting any of you by picking one over the others makes me feel sick. And I know that what you have built here, the 3 of you together, is beautiful. I do not want to break it. You would not break it. I might, if I am not careful." Eleanor looked toward the cabin where Jonas slept and Silas dozed. They deserve to be part of this conversation. They will be, when Jonas is well enough. Caleb stood, offering her his hand. "For now, just know that whatever you decide, you will not lose any of us. We are yours, Eleanor, all 3 of us, however you want us." She took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. "Take me inside," she said. "I want to be near all of you tonight." They went in together, and Eleanor settled into the chair by Jonas's bed, her hand finding his, even in sleep. Caleb sat on the floor beside her, his back against the wall, his presence a warm anchor in the darkness. And for the first time since she had fled Charleston, Eleanor Whitmore slept without dreaming of monsters. Jonas was on his feet by the end of the 2nd week, though Silas restricted him to light duties. No lifting, no chopping wood, no heroic rescues of damsels in distress. "There are no damsels here," Jonas rumbled. Silas glanced at Eleanor. "Clearly not. But the point stands. You tear those stitches, and I will personally knock you unconscious and tie you to the bed." Jonas muttered something unflattering about doctors in general and brothers in particular, but he obeyed. Eleanor used the time to learn more about the camp, about the rhythms of life in the wilderness that would become her home. She helped Silas with the cooking when his arm was too sore for fine work. She helped Caleb with the repairs to the buildings damaged in the fight. She even helped Jonas with the simpler tasks of maintaining the trap lines, walking beside him through the forest while he pointed out signs she was learning to read. The days grew shorter. The nights grew colder. Winter was coming, and with it the isolation that would cut them off from the world for months at a time. Eleanor found she was looking forward to it. One afternoon, when Jonas was well enough to sit on the porch without supervision, Eleanor found herself alone with Silas in the main cabin. He was struggling to play his violin one-handed, producing sounds that were more tortured animal than music. "Let me help," Eleanor offered. "You play—" "I had lessons in Charleston." She smiled at his surprised expression, shocked that a proper Southern lady would know how to do something useful, merely impressed. Silas surrendered the instrument. "Most of the women I met in my former life could barely manage the piano, and only for the purpose of looking decorative." Eleanor settled the violin under her chin, tested the strings, made a few adjustments. Then she began to play. It was a simple melody, something she had learned as a child and never forgotten. Her technique was rusty, her fingering imprecise, but the music came through anyway, clear and sweet in the afternoon light. When she finished, Silas was staring at her. "You are full of surprises, Eleanor Whitmore. Eleanor Bennett now, or perhaps Eleanor Thornton, if you will have me." The words hung in the air between them. Silas set down the cup he had been holding. "Is that a proposal? I do not know what it is." Eleanor lowered the violin. "I am trying to figure out how to have a conversation that no one has ever taught me how to have." She took a breath. "I know what I feel. I know what I want. But I do not know how to say it without sounding presumptuous or desperate or insane. Try." Eleanor set the violin aside and faced him directly. "I love your brother," she said. "Caleb, I told him so last week." Silas's expression did not change. "I know. He told me." Eleanor blinked. "He did." "We do not keep secrets from each other." Silas smiled gently. "Not about things that matter." "And what did you say when he told you?" "I said I was not surprised, and that I hoped you might feel the same way about me." Eleanor felt her heart begin to race. "I do," she said. "Feel the same way, I mean. About you. And about Jonas." She shook her head. "I know how that sounds. I know it should not be possible to love 3 people at once, but I do not know how else to describe what I feel. Love is not a finite resource, Eleanor." Silas moved closer, close enough to touch but not touching. "It does not run out if you share it with more than one person. It grows, multiplies, becomes more than it was before. Is that what this is? What you 3 have? It is part of it. We are brothers, so our love has always been there, built into our blood. But we have also chosen each other again and again through every hardship and every loss." Silas paused. "We would choose to include you if you would have us. All of us. Together. How would that even work? We figure it out as we go." Silas finally reached out his good hand, taking hers. "There is no rule book for this, Eleanor. No precedent to follow. We simply pay attention to each other, communicate honestly, and adjust as needed. And if it goes wrong, then we fix it. Or we change it. Or we end it if that is what needs to happen. But we do not fail because we were too afraid to try." Eleanor looked at their joined hands, at this kind, gentle man who had given up everything he had worked for and somehow built something better in its place. "I am afraid," she admitted, "of us, of myself, of wanting something so much that I destroy it by wanting it wrong." Silas stepped closer. With his broken arm still bound, he could not embrace her properly, but he pressed his forehead to hers, breathing in the space they shared. "You could not destroy this if you tried," he murmured. "We are stronger than that. All of us, including you." Eleanor closed her eyes. When she opened them again, she made a decision. "Kiss me," she said. "I need to know if this is real." Silas obliged. His kiss was different from Caleb's, softer, more questioning, more playful. Where Caleb burned, Silas sparkled. Where Caleb demanded, Silas invited. Both of them were exactly right. When they broke apart, Silas was smiling. "Real enough for you?" Eleanor laughed, the sound bubbling up from somewhere deep inside. "Real enough," she confirmed. Now I need to have this conversation with Jonas. You should probably wait until he can stand up without help. Probably. Eleanor grinned. But I am not known for my patience. She found Jonas on the porch watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of orange and pink. He was sitting in the chair Caleb had built his massive frame, making it look like doll furniture. "May I join you?" she asked. He nodded without speaking. Eleanor settled into the chair beside him. For a long moment, neither of them said anything. Then Jonas spoke. "Caleb told me about what you said to him. And I saw you with Silas just now through the window." Eleanor felt her face flush. "I was planning to talk to you next. You do not need to explain." Jonas turned to look at her, and his dark eyes held no judgment, only a kind of patient understanding. "I know what you are doing, what you are feeling. I have felt it myself with my brothers for most of my life. You have. We grew up together, survived together, built this place together." Jonas's deep voice was soft. "Love between us was never a question. It simply was. The only question was whether we would ever find someone else who could understand that. And you think I understand? I think you are trying to. Which is more than most people would do." Eleanor turned in her chair to face him fully. "Jonas, I need to say this clearly so there is no misunderstanding. I love Caleb. I love Silas. And I love you. Not the same way I love them, but just as much. Just as real." She took a breath. "I do not know how to be what you all need. I do not know if I can be enough for 3 people when I have barely learned to be enough for myself. But I want to try." Jonas was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached out and took her hand in his massive one. "When I was in the asylum," he said slowly, "I used to dream about being part of something, a family, a tribe, a group of people who chose each other and stuck together no matter what." He paused. "When I got out, I thought I had found it with my brothers, and I had. But there was always something missing, a piece that did not fit yet because we had not found it. And now I think we found it." Jonas's dark eyes met hers. "You are the missing piece, Eleanor. You are what we have been waiting for without knowing we were waiting." Eleanor felt tears prick her eyes. "I do not know if I deserve that. None of us deserve anything." Jonas squeezed her hand. "We simply are given chances, and we either take them or we do not. You took your chance when you ran from Charleston. You took another when you stayed here instead of running again." He paused. "Take one more. Stay. Be part of this. Let us figure it out together." Eleanor looked at this giant of a man who spoke so rarely and felt so deeply, who had survived 13 years of silence and emerged with his capacity for love intact. "I will," she said. "I am. I choose this. I choose you. All of you." Jonas nodded slowly. Then he leaned forward and kissed her forehead with surprising gentleness. "Welcome home, Eleanor Thornton." The tears spilled over then, but she did not try to stop them. She had spent her whole life being told she belonged to someone else. Now for the first time she belonged to herself. And she was choosing to share that belonging with 3 men who understood what it meant to build a life from broken pieces. The letter arrived 3 weeks later. Maggie brought it personally riding up the mountain on a cold November morning with frost on her eyelashes and news that could not wait for the postal service. "From Charleston," she said, handing the envelope to Eleanor. Official looking. Eleanor turned the letter over in her hands. The seal bore the mark of a law office she did not recognize. The handwriting on the address was unfamiliar. The brothers gathered around as she opened it. "Dear Miss Whitmore," the letter began. "It is my duty to inform you that Marcus Harrington, formerly of Charleston, South Carolina, has been convicted on multiple counts of murder in the 1st degree. The evidence presented at trial included testimony from former household staff, physical evidence recovered from his properties, and documented patterns of abuse spanning several decades. Mr. Harrington has been sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. He will spend the remainder of his days at the South Carolina State Penitentiary. Furthermore, I must inform you that your father, William Whitmore, has publicly disavowed any connection to Mr. Harrington or his crimes. The engagement between yourself and Mr. Harrington has been officially annulled, and all claims against you, including the spurious theft charges, have been dismissed. You are, in the eyes of the law, a free woman. However, I must also inform you that your parents have requested no further contact with you. They have formally disowned you, citing your choice to flee rather than honor the family arrangement. Your inheritance has been forfeited, and your name has been removed from the family registry. I am sorry to deliver such mixed news. For what it is worth, I believe you made the right choice. Some cages, no matter how gilded, are not worth staying in. If you ever return to Charleston, please know that there are those of us who remember Eleanor Whitmore as a young woman of courage and principle. You will always be welcome in my office. With respect and admiration, James Monroe, Esquire, Attorney at Law. Eleanor lowered the letter. The silence in the cabin was complete. Finally, Silas spoke. "Are you all right?" Eleanor looked at the letter again, at the formal language that told her she was both free and orphaned in the same breath. "I thought I would feel more," she said slowly. "Sadness, anger, something. But mostly I just feel relieved. Relieved that Harrington is gone. Relieved that I do not have to pretend anymore. That I do not have to carry the weight of being a Whitmore, of living up to expectations I never wanted to meet." She set the letter aside. "My parents chose a monster over me. They sold me like livestock and then disowned me for refusing to be sold." She shook her head. "I should probably grieve for the family I never had. But the truth is, I stopped thinking of them as family a long time ago." Caleb moved to stand beside her. "You have family now," he said. "If you want us." Eleanor looked around the cabin, at Jonas by the fire, solid as the mountains outside, at Silas with his gentle smile and his healing arm, at Caleb with his amber eyes and his fierce protective loyalty. "I do want you," she said, "more than I have ever wanted anything." "Then the Whitmore name does not matter." Caleb's voice was firm. "You are Eleanor Thornton now. You are ours, and we are yours, and nothing from your old life can change that." Eleanor felt something settle into place inside her. The last fragment of her old identity, the last connection to a world that had never truly wanted her, finally released its grip. She was free, truly, completely free, and she knew exactly what she wanted to do with that freedom. Winter came early that year. By the first week of December, the passes were closed, the trails buried under feet of snow, the world outside reduced to a distant memory. The Thornton camp became an island in an ocean of white, isolated from everything and everyone. Eleanor had never been happier. The long nights gave them time to learn each other, to discover the rhythms and rituals that would define their life together, to build something new from the pieces of their individual pasts. They settled into a routine that felt natural, unforced. Mornings were for work, the endless tasks of survival in a harsh environment. Afternoons were for rest, for reading, for the quiet companionship of people who did not need to fill every silence with words. Evenings were for music and stories, and the gradual deepening of intimacy. Eleanor learned that Caleb woke before dawn every day, unable to shake the habits of his military years. He would start the fire, make coffee, and sit in the darkness watching the stars fade, and she learned to wake with him, to share that quiet hour before the world demanded their attention. She learned that Silas played his violin almost every night, his broken arm healing well enough to manage the instrument by Christmas. The music filled the cabin with warmth, with beauty, with something that felt like a prayer, even though none of them were religious. She learned that Jonas spoke more as the winter progressed, his long silence thawing in the warmth of acceptance. He told her stories about his childhood, about his mother, who had died too young, about the years in the asylum that had nearly destroyed him. Each word was a gift offered freely, trusted completely. And she learned about herself. She learned that she was stronger than she had ever believed, that she could chop wood and carry water and skin a deer without flinching, that she could shoot straight and ride hard and survive conditions that would have killed the Charleston debutante she had once been. She learned that she was capable of love, real love, not the performative affection demanded by society, love that chose, that gave, that grew stronger with each passing day. She learned that she had a capacity for joy that years of repression had not destroyed, only buried, and on the longest night of the year, when the darkness stretched on forever and the cold pressed against the cabin walls like a living thing, she learned what it meant to truly belong. They gathered around the fire, all four of them wrapped in blankets and warm from dinner. Silas had just finished playing a haunting melody that seemed to echo the howling wind outside. "I want to tell you something," Eleanor said. The brothers turned to look at her. "Before I came here, before I met any of you, I used to dream about dying. Not suicide, just not existing anymore. Disappearing." She stared into the fire, unable to meet their eyes. "I would lie in my bed in Charleston and imagine what it would be like if I simply stopped being Eleanor Whitmore. If I could close my eyes and never wake up." The silence was heavy, but not uncomfortable, not judging. "I do not dream about that anymore," Eleanor continued. "Now when I close my eyes, I see this place. I see you. I see a future that I never believed was possible." She looked up, meeting each of their gazes in turn. "You did not just save my life when you found me on that trail. You gave me a reason to want to live it." Jonas moved first, rising from his chair and crossing to kneel beside her. His massive hand covered both of hers. "You gave us the same gift," he said. "Before you came, we were surviving. Now, we are living. There is a difference." Silas nodded. "I spent years wondering if I would ever feel whole again after losing everything in Boston. Then you walked into our lives, and suddenly the missing piece was not missing anymore." Caleb reached out to touch her face, tilting it toward him. "I love you, Eleanor," he said, simply, directly, without reservation. "As do I," Silas added. "And I," Jonas finished. Eleanor felt the tears coming, but these were different from the ones she had shed before. These were tears of completion, of arrival, of finally reaching a destination she had not known she was seeking. "I love you," she said, "all of you, forever." The firelight danced on the walls, the wind howled outside, and inside the cabin 4 people who had each been broken by the world held each other together in the darkness. It was not the ending of anything. It was the beginning of everything. Spring came slowly to the mountains. The snows melted in stages, revealing the world beneath in patches of brown and green. The passes opened, the trails cleared. The isolation of winter gave way to the possibility of contact with the outside world. Maggie was their first visitor. She rode up on a sunny morning in late March, her horse picking its way through the mud with practiced ease. Eleanor met her on the porch, and the older woman's face split into a wide smile. "You look well," Maggie said. "More than well. You look happy." "I am happy." Eleanor helped her dismount. "Happier than I have ever been." They went inside, where the brothers were waiting with coffee and the eager curiosity of people who had been without news for months. "Tell us everything," Silas said. "What has been happening in the world?" Maggie settled into a chair with a grateful sigh. "Where to start? Harrington is rotting in prison. Blackwood lost everything, his company, his money, his reputation. Victor Crane disappeared and has not been seen since." She took the cup Caleb offered. "But that is old news. The new news is about you." "Us." Eleanor frowned. "What about us?" "You are famous." Maggie laughed at their expressions. "Well, locally famous. The story of the woman who ran 3,000 miles to escape a murderous judge and the 3 brothers who fought an army to protect her. It has spread through every settlement in the territory. People are calling it a romance for the ages." "We are not a romance," Jonas growled. "We are just us. Call it what you want." Maggie's eyes twinkled. "The point is, you have friends out there, people who respect what you did and how you did it. If you ever need anything, just ask." Eleanor felt a warmth spread through her chest. For so long she had expected judgment, condemnation, the same cruel rejection that had defined her life in Charleston. Instead, she had found acceptance. "There is something else," Maggie said, her tone growing more serious. "Something I wanted to discuss with you." "What is it?" "The territorial government is looking to establish more permanent settlements in this region. They want reliable people to file homestead claims to put down roots to help civilize the frontier. Maggie looked around the cabin. You have been living here for years without any official claim. If someone wanted to challenge your right to this land, they could. Let them try, Caleb said darkly. That is exactly my point. You should not have to fight for what is already yours. Maggie turned to Eleanor. But you could claim it legally. Single women can file homesteads. If you register this land in your name, no one can ever take it from you. Eleanor looked at the brothers. It would mean putting my name on official documents, she said slowly. Eleanor Whitmore, or whatever name I choose to use. It would create a paper trail. It would also create protection, Silas pointed out. Legal protection that we do not currently have. And it would mean committing. Caleb's amber eyes met hers, making this permanent not just in spirit, but in law. Eleanor considered the implications. The risk of being found weighed against the security of belonging to a place that could not be taken away. It was not really a choice at all. I will do it, she said. I will file the claim. In what name? Maggie asked. Eleanor smiled. Eleanor Thornton, she said. It is time I made that official. The trip to the territorial office took 3 days. Caleb rode with her, leaving Silas and Jonas to watch the camp. They traveled through countryside that was coming alive with spring, the trees budding, the streams running high with snowmelt, the whole world renewing itself. On the second night, camped beside a creek that ran clear and cold, Caleb asked her a question. Are you sure about this? About the claim? About all of it? He stared into the fire. The name, the commitment, making this your life forever. Eleanor moved closer to him, leaning against his shoulder. I have never been more sure of anything, she said. For the first time in my existence, I am choosing my own path, not having it chosen for me, not following rules that someone else made. Choosing. It will not be easy. Nothing worth having ever is. She turned to look at him. Are you having second thoughts? No. Caleb's voice was firm. I just want to make sure you are not. Eleanor reached up and touched his face. I spent 23 years being told who I was, she said softly. Eleanor Whitmore, daughter of William Whitmore, future wife of whoever my father chose. I was property, Caleb, a thing to be traded for social advantage and financial gain. She let her hand drop. Then I ran, and for 6 weeks I was no one, just a body moving across the country trying to survive long enough to reach something better. She smiled. And then I found you, all 3 of you, and for the first time I had the chance to choose who I wanted to be. And who do you want to be? I want to be Eleanor Thornton, wife to 3 brothers, partner, equal, family. She held his gaze. I want to be the woman who stayed, not the woman who ran. I want to build something here, something lasting, something real, with you. Caleb pulled her close, pressing his lips to her forehead. Then that is who you will be, he said. The filing was simple, almost anticlimactic. A bored clerk in a dusty office, a stack of papers, a fee paid in cash. Eleanor signed her new name 3 times, watched the clerk stamp and seal the documents, and walked out into the sunshine as the legal owner of 160 acres in the Idaho high country. Congratulations, Caleb said. You are a landowner. We are landowners, Eleanor corrected. This is for all of us. The ride home felt different, lighter somehow, as if the official recognition of what they had built had added something to it, made it more real. When they crested the final ridge and the camp came into view below them, Eleanor felt her heart swell. Home. It was really truly home now. Silas and Jonas were waiting on the porch of the main cabin. As Eleanor and Caleb rode in, Silas held up a bottle that caught the afternoon light. We have been saving this, he called out, for a special occasion. The whiskey was shared around glasses raised in toast. To Eleanor Thornton, Silas said, official owner of the Thornton homestead. To all of us, Eleanor countered. This land belongs to all of us, no matter whose name is on the paper. To family, Jonas rumbled. The family we chose. They drank. And then Silas set down his glass with unusual ceremony. Actually, he said, there is one more thing we should discuss. He looked at his brothers, some kind of silent communication passing between them. Then Caleb nodded, and Jonas rose to retrieve the small wooden box from its place by the fire. The rings. Eleanor felt her breath catch as Jonas opened the box, revealing the 4 silver bands that had belonged to their mother. "We talked about this all winter," Caleb said, "about what these rings mean, about what it would mean to give you one of them." "You said it was a promise," Eleanor whispered. "A place for me here." "It is." Silas moved closer. "But we want it to be more than that. We want it to be official as anything can be given our circumstances." Eleanor looked at each of them in turn. "What exactly are you asking?" Jonas lifted one of the rings from the box. "Marry us," he said. "All 3 of us. Not legally, not in any church, but truly. Make vows, exchange rings, be wife to 3 husbands, and let us be husbands to 1 wife." Eleanor felt tears threatening. "That is not possible," she said. "The world does not work that way. The world does not have to know." Caleb took her hand. "This is between us. Our promise, our commitment, our choice." Silas smiled. "We have already been living this truth," he said. "All we are asking is to name it, to honor it, to make it something we have chosen deliberately, not something we have simply fallen into." Eleanor looked at the ring Jonas held, a simple silver band worn smooth by years of being loved, a ring that had belonged to the mother of 3 boys who had grown into men she loved more than anything in the world. "Yes," she said. The word came out stronger than she expected. "Yes," she said again. "I will marry you, all 3 of you. I will be your wife, and you will be my husbands, and the world can think whatever it wants." Jonas took her left hand, slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. "Then I take you as my wife," he said, "to love, to honor, to protect, for as long as I live." Caleb was next. "I take you as my wife," he said, "to cherish, to support, to stand beside, in good times and bad, in sickness and health, forever." Silas was last. "I take you as my wife," he said, "to laugh with, to cry with, to build something beautiful with, in this life and whatever comes after, always." Eleanor looked at the 3 remaining rings in the box. "And I take all of you as my husbands," she said, her voice steady, despite the tears streaming down her face. "To love, to honor, to cherish, to stand with, to fight for, to never abandon. I give myself to you freely, completely, without reservation, for as long as I live and beyond." She took the remaining rings from the box and placed one on each of their fingers. They fit perfectly, all 4 of them, as if they had been waiting all this time for exactly this moment. The summer that followed was the happiest of Eleanor's life. They built a 4th cabin that year, larger than the others, with windows facing the morning sun and a porch where 4 people could sit and watch the world go by. "This is for all of us," Caleb said as they raised the final beam. "Not separate spaces, one home for one family." "Our family," Silas added. A traveling photographer passed through in August, a young man with big dreams and bigger camera equipment. He was heading west, he said, documenting the frontier before it disappeared. "Would you mind if I took your photograph?" he asked. "You make quite a picture, the 4 of you." They stood on the porch of their new cabin, Eleanor in the center, her hand on Caleb's shoulder, Jonas's arm around her waist. Silas pressed close on her other side. All 4 of them smiled. Real smiles, the kind that came from deep happiness, from belonging, from love. Later, when the photographer had gone, Eleanor wrote on the back of the image, "We chose each other, and the world be damned. E.T., 1892. She would keep that photograph for the rest of her life. The years passed. They faced challenges as everyone does, harsh winters that tested their endurance, occasional visitors who looked at their arrangement with suspicion or confusion, the slow aging of bodies that had once seemed invincible. But they faced everything together. Eleanor gave birth to their first child in the spring of 1894. a girl with green eyes and dark hair who could have belonged to any of her fathers. They named her Hope. 2 more children followed, a boy who had Caleb's intensity and Jonas's size, a girl who had Silas's gentle spirit and Eleanor's fierce determination. The children grew up knowing that love did not have to follow rules, that family could take many forms, that the measure of a life was not what society thought of it, but what it meant to the people living it. Eleanor taught them to read and write, to play the violin, to shoot straight and ride well. She taught them the history of Charleston and why she had left it, the story of their fathers, and how they had found each other. She taught them that freedom meant choosing what you wanted instead of accepting what you were allowed. On her 60th birthday, Eleanor sat on the porch of the cabin they had built together, watching the sun set over the mountains she had come to love. Caleb sat beside her, his hair gone white, his amber eyes still sharp. Silas was inside playing a tune on his violin that drifted through the windows like a blessing. Jonas stood at the railing, watching the last light fade his massive frame, smaller now but still solid as the mountains themselves. "Do you ever regret it?" Caleb asked. He asked her this question every year on her birthday, and every year she gave him the same answer. "Never," she said. "Not for a single moment. Not even Charleston. Not even your inheritance, your position, your name." Eleanor smiled. "I gave up nothing," she said, "and I gained everything. A home, a family, a life worth living. 3 men who love me exactly as I am." She reached out and took his hand. "That is not something to regret. That is something to treasure." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge from the darkening sky. 4 people who had refused to accept the world's limitations. 4 people who had chosen each other and built something that would outlast them all. When Eleanor Thornton died at the age of 92, she did so surrounded by her children, her grandchildren, and the memory of 3 men who had loved her completely. She was buried beside them in the valley they had called home, beneath a simple marker that bore 4 names and a single inscription: "They chose each other, and the world be damned." In 1947, Professor William Garrett closed Eleanor's journal and sat in silence for a long time. Outside the cabin window, the Idaho sky was gray with approaching snow. The demolition crews would arrive tomorrow. This place, this testament to an impossible love, would be reduced to rubble and memories. But the story would survive. Garrett carefully placed the journal, the photograph, and the 4 silver rings back into the wooden box. He would donate them to the Idaho Historical Society, he decided, with a request that they be kept sealed until the world was ready to understand what they represented. The last page of the journal had contained a message written in Eleanor's elegant hand. "If you are reading this, know that love is worth running 3,000 miles to find, worth giving up everything you have ever known, worth building a life in the wilderness with 3 men who understand your soul. Do not let anyone tell you that you must love according to their rules. Do not let anyone define the shape your happiness must take. Choose your own path, find your own family, and hold on to them with everything you have. Because love, real love, is always worth the risk, always worth the fight, always worth choosing every single day, no matter what the world says. Some stories end. This one just learned how to breathe." E.T. Professor Garrett smiled, closing the box with reverent hands. Some stories he thought deserved to last forever, and this one would.